Apparently, my house has enough room for everyone, except me. They kicked me out, mocked my struggle, then showed up years later, demanding I give them the home I built from the pain they caused. There are things that don't need to happen out loud. They just have to repeat it enough in silence to kill something in a child. Dan and I grew up in the same house. Same porch, the same worn-out sofa where my father often sat, and my grandfather's old armchair that he still couldn't bear to throw away. But the way we were treated was completely different, to the point that if a stranger looked in, they would think I was a distant relative staying there, and Dan was blood. I was born first. But as soon as Dan was born, I knew my place in the house had been moved, silently but permanently. From a firstborn son, I became a shadow. The person was asked to watch over the baby, give him toys, and soothe him to sleep. And any dissatisfaction from me was quelled with a familiar sentence. You are the older brother. You must know how to yield to your younger brother. Giving in sounds like a natural thing, a moral obligation. But in my family, giving in means taking a loss. By keeping silent when Dan was chosen as the main character in every family meeting, every birthday party. By not complaining when Dan got a new bike and I had to reuse the old one. With being scolded for not helping Dan with his homework while I hadn't finished mine. Every time I speak up, I'm called selfish. Every time Dan gets angry, his parents call it strong character. When I won a drawing contest at school, my mother laughed and said, "Yeah, that's okay, but Dan's colors are brighter." When Dan kicked the bedroom window, my dad said, "Just happen. Don't overdo it." I don't remember when I started learning how to be silent. Maybe it's since the day I discovered that every time I tell the truth, I lose a little space in my house. I sat and ate quietly. I washed the dishes before I was wrong. I do my homework in silence. And I never ask, why me? I remember one time I had a high fever of nearly 39 degrees. My mother took me to the doctor, but when I got home, all attention was on Dan. He had just scraped his knee running in the schoolyard. I lay alone in bed, sweating, listening to them laughing and talking in the living room. The fever subsides, but the feeling that I'm gradually disappearing never cools down. At school, I don't tell anyone about my family. Not because I'm scared, but because I know if I say it, no one will believe me. Because on the outside, my house is as normal as any other house. My father has a stable job. My mother arranges flowers every weekend. Dan plays sports. I study well. We are the model family, unless you live in one. I don't hate Dan. It was the strangest thing. I don't blame him for being loved more. Dan didn't choose that. But I'm not close to Dan either. Between us is an invisible barrier, not because he created it, but because I built it to protect myself. Whenever relatives come to visit, Dan is the first person mentioned. "You're very good at piano, right, Dan?" Dan is about to be selected for that school's basketball team. What about me? The older boy is very good, he never complains. They called me easy to raise, as if it were a compliment. But I know, easy to raise really just means easy to ignore. I'm not destructive. Don't cause trouble. Not required. And so I became the heir. People don't care if the heir is tired or not. As long as it's still enough to breathe, it's fine. When I was 16, Dan got into a fight at school. He came back with swollen lips and his shirt with torn shoulders. My mother ran out and hugged him tightly, crying as if the whole world had just collapsed. My father called the teacher and demanded a lawsuit. When I was criticized in my 10th grade essay, I went home in silence. No one asked. No one knows. I rewrote that article 3 times myself. And when I get good grades, I don't brag, because I know no one is looking. There are wounds without blood. They just lie quietly in your heart, growing up over the years, and one day they make you sit in the middle of your childhood home and no longer feel like it's home. And then when I was 18, it finally happened. Something I thought would never happen, but it turned out to happen as coldly and neatly as everything else they had ever done to me. I came home after the final exam. It's raining heavily. The door to the house was unlocked, but in my room, everything had been cleaned out. My clothes are in 2 large nylon bags. Next to it was a handwritten note from my father. "It's time for you to take care of your own life." I don't ask why. I don't scream. I don't cry. I just sat down on the empty floor, listening to the sound of rain falling on the corrugated iron roof. My mother is washing dishes. Dan is watching TV. No one looked up. That was the moment I understood. Some families don't have to hit you to hurt you. They just need to leave you behind. Little by little, year by year, time by time of ignoring, until you withdraw on your own without anyone having to order you. I grabbed my bag and left the house in silence. No one saw me off. No one holds back. I walked out of the house I had lived in for 18 years without looking back. Not because I didn't want to look, but because I knew if I turned around, I would hope someone changed their mind. But no one ran out. No one called my name. No one opened the door to say that everything was just a misunderstanding. I left, and that house still stood as if I had never been in it. I dragged 2 plastic bags across the rain-slicked sidewalk, with no destination, no shelter, only a list of bus stops I had recorded on my phone. The closest spot is the parking lot next to the old supermarket on the east side, where I know many trucks park overnight. That's where I slept the first night. I don't cry. I don't feel anything. The feeling of being abandoned doesn't come like a loud bang. It comes like a gentle breeze, biting into your chest little by little, every time you wake up and realize no one knows where you are. The first night, I sat in a plastic chair, covered with a thin coat, 2 bags at my feet. I held my backpack in my arms as if there was something important in it, but in reality there was nothing except a few books, a pair of clean socks, and an old notebook my mother had bought for me in 6th grade. The cover had peeled off, and I had resealed it with clear tape. At that time, I kept it not because it was precious, but because it was the only thing left from a time when I thought I was loved. No one called. No one texted. I no longer have a phone because before leaving, my father cut off the connection. The invoice is in his name. I can work part-time, but now I have no address to file taxes, no household registration to fill out a job application. I officially became someone the system couldn't identify. In the days that followed, I began to understand more deeply the concept of invisibility. When you walk into a convenience store, people don't look you in the eye. When you sit outside the bus stop for too long, someone will call security. When you stand in front of the mirror in a public restroom to brush your hair, someone will knock repeatedly on the door to chase you away. Not because you did anything wrong, just because you look like someone who doesn't belong anywhere. I tried to get a job at a fast food restaurant. Manager said he needed an address. I said I don't have it. He looked at me as if I had just said I had no name. I returned to the parking lot, lying in the abandoned truck behind the old factory, the smell of burning plastic still lingering in the seat. I started writing down the things I needed to do to get through the week. Find a place to charge my phone, find a public water fountain, watch for supermarket sales on leftovers, pick up old socks from the self-service laundromat. After 3 weeks, I started to get used to the hunger. Initially, there are abdominal cramps. Then my mind started spinning. Then everything became empty. It's like your mind has no more room for emotions. Only survival remains. I found a job cleaning at night for a small gym. The owner is an old Haitian man with cloudy eyes due to diabetes. He didn't ask much, just gave me the toilet key and told me that if I needed to sleep, I could lie on the yoga mat temporarily, as long as I woke up before 5 a.m. It was the first covered shelter I had after nearly 2 months of sleeping outdoors. One night it was raining heavily. I lay in the sauna with the lights off, my back against the wall, my hand holding my damp jacket. The smell of pine wood rose from the walls. I think about Dan. At that time, he was probably sleeping under a warm blanket with breakfast waiting for him, his mother next to him, and his father asking about school. I'm not jealous. I'm not angry. I just find it strange. Why are 2 lives so far apart under the same roof? I used to hope my parents would call back. We'll text one line, "Are you okay?" But no. Their silence became the final proof that I was right. They were not unaware of my suffering. They just don't care anymore. I got an old phone from the flea market. I created a new social media account. I found some old friends from school. One of them, named Ty, used to study with me in the advanced math class. He was the first person to ask me, "Where are you these days?" I'm telling the truth. Ty didn't say anything more. 3 days later, he drove to where I was cleaning trash behind the gym. He gave me a bag of food, a prepaid phone card, and the phone number of his cousin who needed help at a computer repair shop. I call. Accepted. The job doesn't make much money, but it's enough for me to rent a cheap room in the suburbs. Shared bathroom, no kitchen, but it's home, with padlock, and the key is in my hand. The first night I lay on the foam mattress, I couldn't sleep. Not because it's strange, but because for the first time in 3 months, I can lie still without fear of being chased away. I still haven't contacted my parents. I don't need them to see me survive. I just need to know for myself. I did not die in the silence they left behind. I thought I was over the worst period of my life. I used to believe that the days of sleeping under strange awnings, eating expired bread, cleaning public restroom floors to get free water, were things I had left behind. But in 2020, everything I believed in collapsed one by one. When the epidemic spread to every corner of the city, I was working as a technical assistant for a digital education startup. The job is not stable, but pays evenly. I'm not rich, but I have enough to live on. I rented a small room with windows overlooking the parking lot, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could take a deep breath without my lungs filling with ash. Then the text message came one Monday morning. "We are very sorry. Due to the impact of the epidemic, the company was forced to cut staff. Thank you for your cooperation." No calls. There is no proper thank you. I was cut off like someone deleting an extra line in a spreadsheet, and within a week, I was also asked by the landlord to move out because I was no longer able to pay on time. I picked up my suitcase, grabbed my backpack, and returned to where I started. The old truck that I bought from a builder a long time ago, and then attached a cheap camper van to the back. It used to be my roof when my family refused. Now it's all I have. I didn't tell anyone about it. Don't ask for help, don't call for help. Partly because I'm used to suffering. Partly because I've seen what people like me are seen as in the eyes of society. People who are unstable, unreliable, who don't try hard enough. I parked my car in a public lot, near a park that was closed because of the epidemic. The first night, I lay in the camper, listening to the steady sound of rain falling on the thin aluminum roof, remembering the night I was kicked out of my house when I had just turned 18. That feeling hasn't changed after all these years. Emptiness, helplessness, and the familiar question, how did I get back here? The next day, I went looking for a temporary job. But amid the pandemic, even places that used to pay by the hour have closed or reduced staff. I printed a few flyers and hung them at stores, gas stations, and pharmacies. On-site computer repair. Cheap, secure, no contact. No one called. No one cares. They are busy surviving, and so do I. I eat with food assistance vouchers from a nearby church. Standing in line, among strangers, I realized I had returned to the invisible state I had experienced when I was 18. Only one thing is different. This time, no one can blame the youth. I am a grown man, living in a metal box attached to the back of a nearly broken down car, in the middle of a city that is partially shutting down. One day I got a job cleaning warehouses for a small grocery store. The boss agreed, but told me not to let the guests see my face because you look a bit lacking in confidence. I worked from 8 o'clock at night until 2 in the morning, paid in cash. No contract. No insurance. I accepted because I had no choice. I lived like that for nearly 4 months. Every morning, I use a wet towel to wipe myself in the car. Every afternoon, I open my laptop and sit on the side of the road, asking for Wi-Fi from a convenience store to learn more IT skills. I charge my device from a public outlet in the park. I eat boxed noodles, dry crackers, and drink boiled filtered water from a mini gas stove next to my bed. I cut my hair with beard trimmers. I shave with rainwater. I live as if I were an object that didn't need care, just maintain. And once passing by my parents' house, I tried to stop the car at the beginning of the alley. I don't know why. Maybe I'm looking for a reason to come back. Maybe I just want to look back at the place that pushed me away. I don't go into the house. I'm not knocking. But I texted a single line to my mother's phone. I'm living in the car. If possible, let me park the camper in the backyard. Messages are viewed after 10 minutes. The reply came 2 minutes later. If you pass, you have to pay $350 every week. Electricity, water, and no toilet in the house. Not a single inquiry. Not a single line said, "Are you okay?" Just a price quote. As if I were a stranger looking to rent a temporary parking space. I don't answer. I drove away. Behind me is the house I once called home. Now it's just an address in the phone book, and in memory. I thought I was used to the eyes of strangers. The glances passed, paused for half a second, and then quickly disappeared, as if my existence were a visual programming error. I was once a shadow in my own family. Now I am society's shadow, invisible but still noticed, mentioned by name, in whispers they thought I couldn't hear. I lived in a camper for almost 4 months during the pandemic. No one knows, no one asked. And I don't say. I have a few acquaintances who were in the same class, a few social relationships from short-term jobs, but all are faint and not close enough for me to text. I'm living in my car. It's not because I'm ashamed, but because I know if they don't ask, it means they don't really want to know. One day, I parked my car in an empty parking lot behind a local supermarket, where only 2 or 3 old pickup trucks and an industrial trash bin full of cans remained. I was sitting in the car when I saw a shiny black SUV parked about 3 spaces away from me. I recognized it immediately. Dan. Dan walked down, white shirt, trousers, sunglasses, phone in hand. I wasn't sure if Dan saw me or not, until he turned his head and smiled. "Oh, I thought you went to Europe?" Dan smirked, stepping closer, his voice loud enough that I definitely couldn't miss him. I said nothing. I sat still in the car, rolled down the window just a little, just enough to hear but not let anyone in. Melissa got down from the other chair. Tight dress, high heels, red lips, and disdainful eyes. She held her little daughter's hand, but it was clear that the baby was just an accessory in the condescending display of power she was preparing. "Minimalist lifestyle?" Melissa let out a sentence, glanced at my camper. Her voice was sweet and teasing. "It looks convenient, as long as it doesn't rain." Dan burst out laughing. An empty, soulless laugh. He looked at me like he was looking at a bad memory that he felt lucky to not belong to anymore. I got out of the car. Not because I want a confrontation. Just because I don't want anyone to think I'm hiding. This camper doesn't have an awning, but at least no one threw me off it when I was 18, I said. My voice was even. Dan was speechless for a second. I saw Melissa pause, but then she smiled softly and stroked her hair. Life must have taught you many lessons, she said, her lips smiling but her eyes closed. I learned my first lesson when I saw a younger brother being taught by his parents how to put others down instead of being a good person. I replied, without raising my voice. Dan stepped back. I knew he wanted to argue, but perhaps in that moment he couldn't find any argument that caught his ear. Melissa turned away first. Dan followed. Goodbye, wanderer. Dan let out a sentence without looking back. I watched them leave. Not angry, no pain, just feel. The next day I saw a box of paper in front of the camper door. The sender's name is not written on it. I opened it. Inside was a torn pillow, a few pieces of moldy bread, and a handwritten note. Good night. I don't need to guess. Even though the handwriting is strange, the voice smells familiar. I took the whole box and threw it in the trash without saying anything. But I bought a hidden camera the next day. I don't need confrontation. I just need to prove I'm not crazy. I attached the camera to the rearview mirror. Start recording. Every night. And then I got what I needed. A video. Melissa, at 2:41 a.m., walked quickly to the camper, threw 2 eggs on the front window, and then ran away. Don't wear a mask. Do not cover your head. Clear face. Gate is clear. Step by step. I said that part to the local police. Not to sue. Just to record disruptive behavior. They called her the next day. I know because I heard her scream while standing on the phone in the parking lot. There's no proof. Those things could be made up. The police only need one sentence. You were filmed, Melissa. 3 days later, I received an envelope taped to the outside of the camper. Inside was $250 in cash. No notes, no apologies, no return address. I don't use that money. I keep it in the closet like a bill paid, not with words, but with silence. Time passes. Dan did not reappear. Neither does Melissa. But sometimes I still catch someone looking at me for too long at the gas station, or see an anonymous account sending me spam messages via work email. Do you think you're better than anyone? Or you should be thankful you're still alive. I don't react. I continue to fix computers. I accept more contracts from small businesses that need someone to install remote security systems. I learned more about data encryption. I started an anonymous blog about my minimalist living experiences, not because I wanted to share, but because I needed to write down to remember that I was alive. And then one night, I got a call from an unexpected person, Dan's cousin. Lucas, he said, my younger brother is living in our parents' house now, arguing with Melissa all the time. I think it's not entirely right between the two of you, but I want to say, I see that what you've suffered is real. And I'm sorry for being silent for so long. I don't say thank you. I don't forgive either. I just hung up, sat alone in the car, the cold wind blowing through the half-open window, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a failure. I just found myself still standing. And that's enough. When everyone only worried about surviving, I started learning how to live again. Not the instinctive survival type. It's a kind of intentional living, where you don't simply want to live another day, but you want tomorrow to be different from yesterday. I've been at the bottom long enough to understand, if I don't climb up, I will rot in silence, and I refuse to die like that. I don't have a roadmap. No strategy. I only have patience, something that poverty and loneliness have trained in me to the point that it is no longer a character, but a survival instinct. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. in a moldy camper. I turned on my old computer and charged it with a solar battery that I assembled myself from old components bought at the flea market. I learned coding, learned network administration, learned system security. For things I can't pay to learn, I find archives on the forums. I don't need a degree, I need skills. And then one day, in an anonymous programmers group, I saw a job posting. A small e-commerce company in Texas needed someone to tweak its backend system. Low pay, high requirements, but accept remote. I knew I had nothing to lose, so I sent over a sample script I once wrote. No resume, no letters of recommendation, just code. 3 days later, they replied, "We don't care who you are, we just need the job done." When do you start? I started that evening. I worked for 7 days without stopping. I fixed 23 bugs in their system, optimized a piece of code to run 3 times faster, and rewrote the user manual for the entire team. When they asked me where I wanted to receive the money, I sent them a temporary PayPal account, and I received the first $400 with my own efforts. No one in between, no one to suggest, no one to teach. That's not a lot of money. But it is clean money. Money doesn't taste like pity. And for me, it's enough to live another week without feeling like a burden. That company returned 3 more times over the next 2 months. Then they referred me to another company. Then another company introduced a senior freelancer. I started getting customers. I don't advertise, I don't need to build a personal brand. I did well, and they came back. That's enough. I opened a savings account. I divide my money into 3 parts. 60% live, 30% save, 10% buy back what I once lost. Not things, but the feeling that I have the right to decide my own future. A year later, I had enough money to rent a small room. Not loud, 1 bedroom, private toilet, no more campers, no more washing your face at the gas station. I signed the lease in my own name, with the bank account I opened, with the money I earned. I bought a new mattress, an old wooden table, and a reading lamp. For the first time, I can turn on the light without worrying about draining the battery. I sat down to read technical documents at 2 a.m. without getting fired. I left the dishes in the sink without anyone telling me, I don't have the right to be here. That was the first time in many years that I felt like I wasn't a borrower of life. I have no contact with my family. I don't want them to know. Not because I'm angry, but because I don't want my achievements to become an excuse for them to feel like they were right. That it was because they kicked me out that I grew up. I didn't grow up because I was left behind. I grew up because I refused to die being left behind. 2 years into the pandemic, I bought my first home. It's not big. The paint peeled off the walls, the door creaked, and the backyard was full of weeds. But it's mine. I pay once. No bank loans. Don't ask anyone to sign your name. No need for parents to be a guarantor. The house is in my name. For the first time, something has my name on it and no one can take it back. I moved in myself. Buy your own home repair tools. Retile the floor yourself. Plug in each electrical outlet yourself and replace each light bulb. I don't throw parties. I don't invite friends. I don't show off online. I just sat in the middle of the empty living room, looking at the afternoon light filtering through the old window, then placed my hand on the cold tile floor and whispered, I'm not dead. And that was the biggest victory of my life. The news that I would buy a house did not come from me, but from a neighbor. The old lady who lives next door knew me during my camper period. One time I helped her carry the shopping cart. One time I repaired her house gate without charging her any money. She still remembered me, and when she saw me coming back, cutting the grass in the front yard, painting the door, she asked, Are you renting it again? I laugh. No, it's mine. She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. The next day she told her daughter, who accidentally knew my cousin. The news kept spreading. A week later, I received the first call from my family after more than 3 years of silence. It's mother. Her voice was light, as if she didn't want to bother. I heard, you bought a house? I was silent for a few seconds, then replied, yes. Happy for you. It must have been really hard to do that. It's okay, but at least no one is charging electricity and water bills every week. The other party said nothing. Then she changed her tone. Do you have a place to sleep for guests? I understand that sentence is not a joke. I smiled, light and cold. Yes, but not for someone who called me a burden. I hung up. Don't wait for a response. I'm not angry. I just don't owe anyone an explanation anymore. I didn't tell anyone the new address. But this city is small enough, and people's mouths never run out of stories to tell. I know the news will reach my family. I just didn't think it would be that fast. After the call from my mother, I thought there would be silence. But 3 days later, the doorbell rang at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It's raining lightly, my porch floor is still wet. I opened the door, and there stood Dan. He didn't even say hello. Just standing there, shirt askew, hair uncombed, as if he'd just driven there in a hurry. Behind is Melissa and 2 children. She held the baby in one hand, and in the other held a bag of cookies wrapped in plastic. Her eyes were neither shy nor kind. I stood in the middle of the doorframe, neither stepping out nor backing in. Dan nodded, trying to sound friendly. Hey, I heard you bought a house. Congratulations. I didn't reply. Melissa chimed in. We were just passing by. We saw the tree decorating your yard. It's so cute. I don't have any plants. I grow wildflowers and vegetables. Dan looked at me, his voice softened. We are a bit stressed lately. The price of the house we rented increased. The new owner is selling. I'm looking for a new place, but it's so difficult. I looked straight into his eyes. So what? I thought, if you had a spare room, you could let us stay for a few weeks. Dan spoke quickly. Just a few weeks. Give the kids a place to settle down. Melissa nodded repeatedly, as if she were the one negotiating a contract, not asking for a place to stay. We won't bother you. The kids are very good. I looked at them. Standing under the porch, I had just painted myself. Their shoes stepping on the wooden floor I had just installed. Their voices echoing in the space I thought would never be violated again. I asked only one question. When I lived in my car, did anyone ask me if I needed help? Dan looked down. Melissa's face changed, and she hurriedly said, It's the past, Lucas. You can't keep it like that forever. It's family. I smirked. Family is something used to remind others that we were left behind, right? Silent. Only the sound of raindrops remained. I didn't invite them in. I won't say more. I closed the door. Not strong, not cold, Just a necessary action to keep this house still a home. The following week, I received a handwritten letter, sent from Mom. No title, no apologies. Just a long paragraph about Dan is stressed, Melissa is overloaded, the kids need fresh air, and ends with one line. You're stable now, I believe you won't abandon your blood. I picked up the letter, then tore it into two, not out of anger, but because there's no reason to stay. 2 days later, Dan returned. Alone. No car. No bag. Just stand outside the gate. I see it from the camera. I'm out. He gave me a piece of paper. It's a rental contract, a sample downloaded from the internet, clearly stating Lucas is the landlord, Dan is the tenant, term of 1 month, rent 0, signed with a blue ballpoint pen. The scribble doesn't look like I at all. I looked at the paper, then looked at Dan. Don't laugh. I didn't sign this. Ron signed for me, Dan said. He said I agreed. I nodded slightly. Then call the police. Dan stood there, his face as stiff as a statue. The police came, I gave the contract, showed the camera. No need to say much. Dan was asked to leave or he would be charged with trespassing and signature forgery. On the way home, Dan looked at me with both shame and resentment in his eyes. I just want to help my family, I replied. By forging signatures and sneaking into other people's houses? Dan did not answer. After that incident, Melissa began to accidentally appear in front of my house every morning. Sometimes she walks by walking her dog. Sometimes her car was parked on the street for nearly 20 minutes. One time, I saw her bring her son to stand in front of the gate, point at my house and say something, then drag him away. I can't hear it, but I know they are creating a new story. On social networks, Melissa posted a photo of the children sitting in front of someone's house. The angle of the photo was off, but anyone who looked closely would know it was my house. The caption is, I asked, why can't I be here anymore, Mom? I don't know how to answer. Broken families, forgiveness is hard. I don't comment. I don't sue. I just downloaded the photo, saved it to my hard drive, and named the file, old script, old role, new audience. But then I realized if I don't react, they will climb another notch. And just as I predicted, the next day I saw car headlights shining straight into the living room at midnight. Melissa sat in the car, silent, the engine still running, the lights not turned off, like a long mental siege. I called the police. They come. She left without saying a word. I applied for a restraining order. A week later, the order was approved. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. I just feel tired. But at least for the first time I knew what I was protecting. Not my home, not my peace, but something I'd never had, the right to choose who came into my life. And they, who once abandoned me, can no longer enter. I'm used to standing alone. Get used to being silent when others try to make noise to drown you out. I'm used to the fact that when someone knocks on the door, the first thing I think of is not who's coming to visit, but who's coming to ask for something. This time too. The knock on the door rang out one Sunday morning. Not urgent, not intense. But there's something about the rhythm of my typing that makes me stand up before I've had my first sip of coffee. I looked through the window, and I knew. It's them. Dan stands in the middle, both hands in pockets, eyes looking down at the ground. Melissa stands on the right, arms crossed, eyes cold. My father stood behind, holding his back as if his spine hurt. My mother stood near the fence, holding a plastic bag as if she was carrying something to share, as if this were a family gathering, not a raid on the land of someone they had chased away. I opened the door. No hello, don't laugh. Dan spoke first. Brother, I know what happened the other day. It was a bit messy, but we've thought about it. Actually, we think living together is reasonable. I looked at him, not understanding, or rather, I don't believe he thought I wouldn't understand the meaning behind it. Melissa chimed in. I mean, you have three bedrooms, we have 2 kids, and you live alone. Your old camper is still in the backyard, right? If you were willing to stay there for a while, this house could still be put to better use. I looked at each of them one by one. They're not kidding. Not a social experiment. Not a reaction test. They are serious, really thinking that I will give up the house I bought myself, repaired it myself, kept it myself, through every sweaty sleep for fear of losing anything, just so they can use it more effectively. My mother spoke up. Lucas, don't you think it's unreasonable that your brother has a family and small children, and you're alone? You can't see that and not see anything. I leaned back a bit, leaning my back against the doorframe. I find it absurd that the people who once threw me out on the street are now back demanding a place to sleep. I find it absurd that when I lived in that camper, none of you invited me in. Now that I have a home, you want me to go out. Melissa sneered. That's a selfish way of looking at it. You've always been the type of person who doesn't know how to share. I nodded slowly. Then say one sentence, evenly, without raising your voice. Do you know why I don't share? Because I used to share everything, the silence, the endurance, the concession, and you guys swallowed it all as if I owed it to you. No one answered. I was about to close the door when Melissa stepped onto the steps and blocked me. "You have no right to treat my children like that. They are your blood." I looked down at her hands, long nails, painted red, clutching the bag strap. I said, "I don't have children. I also don't have a family. You guys cut that off a long time ago. Now when you turn around and ask for help, you call it blood?" I thought I was just a useless, weak, and failed person. Melissa took another step. Her eyes were red. I saw her chest rise and fall. "I swear, Lucas, if you think you can cut yourself off from us like that and live in peace, you're wrong." I smiled slightly. "Did you just threaten me in my home?" And then it happened, so fast that I didn't have time to react. Melissa raised her hand and slapped me. Not strong, not exactly, but enough to make me tilt my head, and enough for me to step back, open my phone, turn on the camera. Dan said nothing, just pulled his wife back in a low voice. "Stop it." My mother stood still. No blocking, no shock. Just stay silent as if this is normal. My father muttered. He deliberately provoked Melissa. I looked at them, each one of them. Then I said, word for word, "You have 3 minutes to leave this land before I call the police. Next time you come back, bring a lawyer." I closed the door. I locked 2 classes. I stood with my back against the door for 10 minutes. No shaking, no pain. But for the first time, I felt like my house, the place I thought was safe, had just been invaded, not by thieves, but by the very people who once called me flesh and blood. I didn't sleep that night. I sat downstairs, phone in hand, watching the clip of Melissa slapping me. The next morning, I sent a report. Not because I want to sue, but because I have no reason to keep silent anymore. I filed a report the next morning. The police office is 3 blocks from my house. I walked in with my phone in hand, opening the video of Melissa raising her hand to slap me. The officer on duty was named Macmillan. Tall, dark-skinned, and had a professional attitude. He looked at the video, said nothing for 30 seconds, just nodded slightly. When the clip ended, he asked, "Do you want to file an official complaint?" I replied, "Yes." "Are there any witnesses?" "No need," I pointed at the phone. "I have proof." "Do you have cameras around the house?" "I got one after being thrown eggs and breaking glasses." I also reported that incident. Macmillan took notes. "Don't laugh. Don't empathize too much. But I know he believes in me. And for me, that's enough. The file is open." I signed the confirmation. The complaint is entered into the system. I left the police station with a copy of the report and an appointment line. We will call back when further clarification is needed. I don't expect anything from the system. I have no illusions that justice is quick or neat. I just want a milestone. Something was recorded. This time, no longer a vague memory, but black and white paper. No one can deny it. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Male voice. Young, exuberant, but fake. "Hello, Mr. Lucas. I am David, legal representative for Mr. Ron's family." I interrupted. "I don't hire a lawyer, and I don't want to talk on the phone. If you have anything to say, send it by mail or email." "Oh, of course. We just hope to resolve this peacefully. Don't let a small misunderstanding become a big incident." She slapped me. "Yes, but the motive is unclear in the video. Maybe it was a self-defense reaction." I laughed. "Defensive reactions in my home when I don't advance, don't threaten, don't touch." David hesitated. "We just hope you don't get too stressed. Perhaps if you agree not to pursue the lawsuit, the family will stop all procedures to reclaim property rights." I was stunned. "What? Ah, I thought you were informed. Mr. Ron's family is conducting legal proceedings to review the ownership of the house based on some community property factors." I hung up. No need to hear more. That afternoon, I received a certified mail envelope. Inside is an application from a lawyer's office named Whitmore and Kane, stating, "Proposal for mediation related to property use rights between family members." The attached document is a diagram of the house I live in and an explanation that says, "Because Lucas lived with Ron's family for more than 18 years, the property he bought can be considered a part built on the family's spiritual contributions, efforts, and foundations." After reading it, I laughed out loud. I sat down, opened the computer, opened the scanned copy of the red book, bank statement and payment bills from the time I was living in the camper until now. I opened a separate folder, named it Family Legal Version. And I started gathering evidence. 3 days later, the police called back. They invited me to make an official report. I brought along a USB containing videos. They received it, reviewed it, and said they would send notice to Melissa and her legal representative. I got home, and before I could take off my shoes, I saw someone knocking on the door. It's Dan. Alone. No Melissa. Childless. No parents. I'm not open. I stood behind the glass, looking straight into his eyes. Dan held out his hand as if negotiating. "Lucas, please. I don't know what she did. I didn't know she hired a lawyer." I said nothing. "You can't let it go, but don't push this any further. I know my parents. They don't want to go to court. They can't stand the pressure." I opened the door. A small slot. When I lived in the car, it was so cold that my breath turned into frost. Could your mother stand it? Dan didn't speak. I continued. You don't need to save them, because I didn't push them away. They came to pull me back down. Dan stepped back. His eyes were no longer angry, only confused. He said one last sentence. Do you really think I haven't seen myself as a victim too? I don't answer, because I didn't save the victim who chose to side with the attacker. 2 weeks later, I received a decision from the local court. The lawsuit requesting conciliation of property use rights was rejected. No basis. There are no grounds. The house is in my name, paid in cash, and is not legally related to anyone in the family records. I printed a copy of the decision, framed it, and hung it right next to the main door. Not to show off, but to remind myself, there are things that if you can't keep them by hand, you have to keep them by law. A month later, I started sleeping well again. It's not because I forgot, but because I know clearly. This time, I won't give in anymore. No backyard, no living room, no doors open. Whoever enters my life from here will have to knock. And I have the right not to answer. A week after I filed charges against Melissa, I thought everything was over. Not because I believe they have any shame, but because I think the law has finally done what I couldn't do with words. Stop them. I was wrong. That evening, when I got home from work, I saw my kitchen light turn on. I was definitely turned off. I definitely locked the door. I walked up the steps, holding the key, but when I put it in the lock, I realized the lock had been changed. Without any warning, not a piece of paper, just a strange lock. I didn't call the police right away. I stepped back, turned on my phone, checked the security cameras. There, clearly, Dan that afternoon, carrying 2 suitcases, a box, and a stack of papers. He stood in front of the door, used his own key, and opened the house. A while later, a locksmith arrived. Dan pointed and said something, and they changed the drive. I dialed 911. 17 minutes later, the patrol car arrived. I gave the police the video recording. They called Dan out of the house. He walked out, hair disheveled, wearing a t-shirt as if this were his legal residence. He signed the contract. Dan held out the paper. A printed contract from Google Docs, signed Lucas, at the bottom of the page. The pen strokes are shaky, tilted to the left, not at all like my handwriting. I didn't sign this, I said. Mr. Ron said I agreed, Dan argued. Ron is not me, I replied. The police made a report. Ask Dan to leave the house at night. I changed the old lock back in their presence. Dan stood there, not reacting, just quietly packing his things. He doesn't argue anymore, just looked at me for a long moment, then walk away. I stood still, not angry, no shaking, but my heart beats in a different rhythm. The rhythm of a person who understands. From now on, everything must have borders. Everything. After that time, I sent a legal warning letter to the entire family. Not through words. No messages. Only documents certified by lawyers with clear red stamps. Any act of approaching, trespassing, or approaching without written consent will be considered an act of trespassing on property and will be handled according to the law. I sent copies to Melissa as well. 3 days later, I saw her car parked on the edge of the neighborhood. But this time, there were no more eggs thrown, no headlights shining into the house. She just sat, silent, then drive away. I know something has changed. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Dan. Theme: I have nothing to hide anymore. I read slowly. Lucas, I'm not writing to apologize because I know you don't need that, but I'm writing because I don't know who I am anymore. Melissa left. She left behind 3 children, half of her assets, and an admission: the youngest child is not mine. I stopped. Read on. She tricked me for 3 years. Fooled the whole family. And now, as I stand here, in a rented room, with 3 children who don't know how to explain, I realize I have never won any of the fights between us. I just thought I was winning, because I was standing closer to my parents. But in reality, I was just a tool for them to control you, pushing you further and further away. I'm sorry for letting myself be used. I'm sorry for not saying anything when Melissa slapped you. I'm sorry for thinking you could take it one more time. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm just asking you, if one day you look back at your family, remember that I also didn't know how to turn back. I read and reread that email 5 times. No reply. But I printed it out, I folded it up and put it in the paper box where I keep my legal files. Not for later use, but to remind, there are apologies that are late, but they are still a mark for an old chapter. 3 weeks later, I heard that Melissa was moving out of town. No one knows where to go. Dan raised his children alone. My mother no longer calls. My father disappeared from every family meeting. Messages become less frequent. The phone goes silent. I don't regret it. I don't need noise to feel alive anymore. Now, when there's a knock on the door, I don't think, who's coming to ask for anything? I thought, does this person know how to tap? Because this house is not just a door. It has boundaries. And I, finally, am the one holding the key. I thought it was all over when Dan wrote an apology letter. When Melissa disappeared from the neighborhood. When my parents were silent for so long that I forgot what their voices used to sound like. But people like Melissa never leave the main way. They sneaked back out the back door, bringing with them the only thing they thought they still had: chaos. One morning, I left the house to go to the supermarket and saw a long cut in my car's windshield, so deep that it almost penetrated the protective plastic layer. There was red paint on the glass, a hand-shaped streak, as if drawn with nail polish or fake blood. Under the windshield wiper was a note. Lucky this time. Next time, who knows? I'm not shaking. Not startled. I just looked for a long time. Then turn on the security camera. 12 o'clock the night before. A gray sedan, license plate covered with tape, stopped 3 minutes in front of my house. The person who came out was wearing a hoodie and mask, moving as if he had rehearsed, but not professional enough. Move. Gait, height, arms slightly bent. I realized, not Dan. It's Melissa. I saved the video and immediately sent it to the police, along with a complaint. I don't call. Don't scream. Do not send indirect messages online. I don't need her to know I know. I just need the law to know. The police responded after 3 days. They confirmed their identities, sending an official warning to Melissa. No prosecution, but enough for the record to note that if it happened again, it would be repeated intentional conduct. I know Melissa reads the letter, because the next day her old Facebook account posted a public status. There are people who think they are living a decent life, but in reality they are just hiding behind the camera and the law. I don't answer. Do not take screenshots. Do not save. I don't need to react. No one needs to know I was attacked to feel sorry for me. I'm past the point of needing someone on my side. Now I don't need either side. I just need to be quiet at the right time. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Send by hand. No postmark. The cover had Lucas written on it in black marker. I don't open it indoors. I took it out to the porch, sat down on a wooden chair, and opened each edge of the letter as carefully as removing a mine. Inside are 3 sheets of paper. The first sheet is a photocopy of a divorce petition. Name Melissa. Name Dan. Date submitted 1 week ago. The second sheet is the asset division table. Dan retains custody of the children. Melissa received 30% of the property, but was completely cut off from access to my house because there was an active prohibition of access. The last sheet was a handwritten note. Do not sign. But I know who it is. I didn't come to ask for your forgiveness, but I came to confirm. I lost, and this time, I don't blame anyone else. I folded the paper and burned it. Do not keep as a souvenir. Do not save as evidence. Because for people like Melissa, holding on to anything, whether it's to protect or defend, is a rope tying themselves back to the old loop. I sat and watched the ashes slowly burn. The last piece flew up, spun around, and then fell down the steps. I stepped on it. Not malicious, just don't let it fly away. From that day on, Melissa truly disappeared. There are no more strange cars in front of the house. No one parked in front of the gate at midnight. No hidden posts. No implied state. It's like it never happened. But I don't forget. I'm just not controlled by that memory anymore. I started sleeping more deeply. Don't get startled in the middle of the night. Don't check the door twice. Do not turn the camera back on before turning off the light. I installed a row of trees in front of the yard, not to block the view, but to remind myself that this place can be rebuilt from scratch with my own hands, without anyone's suggestions, and no one has the right to reclaim it. One afternoon, I received a text message from an unknown number. I heard Melissa left town. Thank you for not pushing things too far. I owe you so much. It's Dan. I don't answer. Not because I'm still angry, but because an apology doesn't require a response. It is the speaker's job, not the recipient's obligation. I saved that number under the name, used to be my brother. A month later, I reopened my old email and found the first message I ever sent my mother. I'm in the car. If possible, let me park the camper in the backyard. That message was never answered properly. I hit delete. No hesitation. I no longer need answers to old questions. I just need to know. I'm no longer the one asking the questions. Now, I'm the one setting the conditions. After Dan was forced to leave home by the police because of a fake contract, I thought I had seen every trick the family could use. But I rated them too low, or not rated their desperation high enough. They don't burst through the door anymore. They didn't come to high-five and apologize. They did not ask to stay. They did something else. They set out to retell the story, but in a way that completely rewrote it. Initially, it was social networks. An account called Truth From Within began appearing in local groups. The posts talk about a cold-blooded person chasing his own brother out onto the street. An article reads, "What kind of person is a person who can live in a luxurious house but cannot open the door to his biological family?" I don't have to guess who wrote it. The writing style, the intonation, the sensitive storytelling style, that's my mother's voice. One of the articles included a blurry photo of my house, taken from a far angle. The caption is, "The house is built from the cracks in other people's hearts." There is a photo of me walking out the door of my house, holding a trash bag. They posted it with the caption, "The only kind action is to throw it away." You can imagine the reaction of outsiders. Some people believe. Someone commented sarcastically. Some sent private messages. "I used to admire you, but now?" Another, "Family is everything. You have no heart." For the first time in many years, I felt the same way I did in my old home. Everything I did was misinterpreted, and the scariest thing was not being scolded, but being defined. But this time, I didn't sit still. I began to react, not with words, but with strategy. I don't argue online. I did not rewrite my version. I only do 3 things. First, I sent all the screenshots of the posts, along with the video and audio recording of Melissa's attack, to my personal attorney. Request a public record of slander. Second, I bought the same domain name as mine, created a simple website. Just one line. "If you hear anything about me, come here to read the truth." This page leads to a Google Drive file containing all the legal documents, court records, real estate contracts, the camera footage of Melissa's attack, the scan of the fake contract Dan once submitted, and one last line, "I don't need anyone's pity. I just won't allow myself to be lied to." Third, I sent that link to each person who texted me to insult me. No explanation, no sorry, no correction. Just send link. A week later, the account Truth From Within deleted all posts. 3 days later, I saw a post in the community group. People always say listen to both sides, but there are people who live by leaving one side speechless. I don't know who wrote it, but I see for the first time there are people speaking up for me. They don't know me. They just saw someone being dragged down and still didn't use mud to retaliate. I thought things had cooled down. But one Friday night, while I was washing glasses in the kitchen, there was the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. I looked through the window. It's my father. Alone. No expensive cars, no ironed shirts, just a middle-aged man with more gray hair than the last time I saw him, standing in front of the house as if waiting for judgment. I opened the door. Not invited in. He looked at me and didn't speak for a while. Then he produced a bundle of paper. This is a picture of Melissa screaming in the lawyer's office when the court denied my request to access my house because the restraining order was in effect. There's a recording of her saying, "I will make him run away from that house like when he was kicked out of his parents' house." I read, "Then look up. Why did you give me this?" He replied in a low voice, "Because for the first time I don't know what to say to defend her." I said nothing. "Son, I was wrong. I know it's slow, maybe too slow, but if I don't give this, I know I'll die like a coward." I nodded. No forgiveness, but nodded. After that, things really calmed down. No more posts, no more texting strangers. There are no more cars parked on the side of the road. I continue to live, like a survivor. No statement needed, no medal needed. I started planting trees around the yard, not for beauty, but to create a living fence. Its roots are deep, its trunk is strong, like the boundary I planted in my heart. One day, I went to the supermarket. A strange woman approached, eyes a bit shy. "You're Lucas, right? I read the website you wrote. I just wanted to say, thank you for not losing your temper." I laugh. Don't say. Just nodded. When I got home, I made coffee, sat down on a chair in the yard. The sunlight slanted through the trees I planted last month. I opened my phone and deleted all the old photos in the album family. Not because I hate them, but because I no longer let them live in my computer for another second. Saturday afternoon, I was cleaning the garden. Mild sunshine, the wind is not cold. The plants started to turn green again after a few weeks of regular watering. Everything was quiet, just the way I like it. No strangers, no parked cars, no anonymous letters, nothing out of the ordinary. Until there was a knock on the door. Not strong, no rush, just 3 beats. I wiped my hands and walked out thinking it was a delivery person. But no, it's the boy. It's Jaden, Dan and Melissa's middle son. I recognized it immediately. Slightly messy brown hair, gray eyes, slightly slouched gait. He wore an old cartoon logo t-shirt and jeans with frayed knees. I stood still. He looked at me, not smiling. "Don't be afraid. You're Uncle Lucas, right?" I nodded. "Yes." Can I ask something?" I opened the door wider. "You shouldn't go alone. My dad knows. He's waiting out there." It pointed to the end of the block where an old car was parked. I saw Dan's shadow. Didn't step out, didn't look over. Just sit, as if holding your breath. I nodded. Jaden asked, "Why doesn't this house let us in anymore?" I'm quiet. No, because there's no answer. But because I'm choosing to tell the truth without breaking a child's heart too early. "Because adults do wrong," I said. It looked at me, tilted its head. I sat down on the steps and gestured. "Sit down." Jaden sat next to me, his feet never touching the ground. In his hand he held a piece of paper. I hadn't noticed it before. A drawing. It's a picture of the house I live in, drawn with colored pencils. There's a tree, there's my car, and there are 3 people. An adult standing in the middle, 2 children on either side. I asked, "Who painted that?" "Natalie," she said, referring to her sister. "He said this house was the most beautiful house he had ever seen. He said, When we were kids, we used to play here. I breathed lightly. Maybe we don't remember, but before things got worse, we used to run around this yard all afternoon, I said. At that time I thought, at least we are still a good part of the family. Jaden. Then he asked, so if we didn't do anything wrong, why can't we be scoundrels? I turned to look at it. Do you know if the door is locked? It nodded. But it's not because the door hates anyone. It's so that people outside can't get in without knocking. If someone comes and breaks the door, the homeowner will change the lock. He looked down at the drawing. Can you type? I looked deeply into its eyes. If it's just to sit, drink, talk, it's always possible. He laughed, for the first time, light but real. I asked, are you hungry? No, but can I have lemonade? I stood up, opened the door, and let him in. Dan did not get out of the car. I know he saw it all. I also know he understands. For the first time in his life, he cannot enter. But his son could, because he came in a way none of them had ever tried. No trumpet, no drum, no demands. Just by asking a real question. Jaden sat in the chair across from me, drinking lemonade with both hands. It looked around the house like it was a strange yet familiar land. What are you doing here all day? I work, plant trees, fix things, write. Are you sad? Yes, but sadness is not always bad. It nodded as if remembering, then asked, do you hate my parents? I exhaled for a long time. I don't hate it, I just won't let them hurt me anymore. But what if one day they get better again? I didn't answer right away. I took a sip of water, then say, I'll still lock the door, but I'll listen for the knock. It laughed again. So we have to knock 3 times like just now? I nodded. 3 knocks. Like a silent signal between 2 generations who once stood at opposite ends of a war that neither side chose to start. Before leaving, Jaden took the drawing left on the table. I asked, why don't you bring it back? Natalie drew it, but I think it would be fun if you kept it. I nodded. When he walked out the door, I stood and watched. Dan was still in the car. Don't move. Jaden didn't wave. But before closing the car door, he looked at me and said, I'll knock again next week. I laugh. Don't reply. It doesn't need permission. It already knows. That evening, I sat on the porch looking up at the sky. Natalie's drawing is in a small glass frame I made myself. Do not hang. I left it on the kitchen table. It's the first thing in years I've let into my house without checking the engine. A picture. A child. A knock on the door does not carry the intention of taking up space, just to know why. And for the first time I thought, maybe one day, this door will reopen. Not because of blood, not because of forgiveness, but because someone is naive enough to think that it was never really closed. I no longer think much about relatives. For 10 years they only appeared in 2 forms, silent or indifferent. People who stand on the sidelines in every conflict, people who send greeting cards but avoid anything real. To me, last name is a common name. Relatives distant enough to not be responsible. But things started to change. Not because I spoke up, but because my family doesn't know how to stop. After the fiasco with the fake lease and Melissa's attack, they begin their final operation, recreating a new version of the truth, with Lucas as an ungrateful traitor who has turned his back on the family that raised him. A relative in another state sent me the first text. Lucas, I heard you're suing your mother? I sat still. Reread the news 3 times. Not because of shock, but because it feels familiar. Another cycle begins. Again, distortion. I replied, I filed a complaint because I was attacked in my own home. That person did not answer immediately, but 3 days later I received another email, this time from my aunt, who had cut off contact when I was evicted. Lucas, your mother is devastated. She said you changed the locks on the house to get the family out of there. Can you at least tell me this once? Is it true? I don't feel angry. I feel funny. Not because they believe, but because they never asked me before believing. I sent my aunt the link to the page I once created, where I saved all the legal documents, the video of Melissa raising her hand to hit me, the fake contract created by Dan, and the letter from the lawyer representing Ron's family. I said, if you read it all and still feel like you need to ask me something, I'm ready to answer. 3 days later, her aunt left a short message. I'm sorry for trusting the wrong person. I didn't reply. But I take note. The news spread. This time, it wasn't through my mother, but through the people who once stood behind her. Now, they are starting to confront her. A cousin who used to be close to Dan sent me a private message. Before I thought you were complicated. Now I see you're the only one who endures without screaming. An aunt who once posted criticism of me now left a comment on my mother's page. Actually, you've been lying to everyone for so many years. I don't need to say anything. The whole system behind me slowly collapsed, not because I collapsed, but because it rotted from the inside. One Sunday afternoon, I received an invitation to dinner from my second uncle's family, the person I thought hated me because of a fabricated story from when I was young. They invited without being fancy, just say, little guy, this time I'm not here to explain, it's to eat and talk if you want. I go. Don't bring anything. Didn't prepare anything. No defense. Dinner took place in a small kitchen with 4 people. No one asked about my mother. No one asked about Dan. But while I was cutting the bread, my second uncle put his hand on the table and said, "Sometimes I used to think you were cold, but now I think you're just trying to survive." I looked at you, then look around the table. No one nodded. No one cried. They just kept eating. It was the first time in many years that I could sit among relatives without feeling like I was playing a supporting role in someone else's story. After that session, the messages came more often. Not an apology. It's the news of those who were once silent but now want to hear my side. A cousin asked, "Are you angry with the whole family?" I replied, "At one time, yes, but not now. I just keep my distance from those who thought my silence was proof I was wrong." Another person wrote, "If you need anything, you can tell me, not because of debt, but because you deserve to have someone to stand with you." I don't ask for help, but I remember, for the first time, I didn't feel completely alone anymore. I don't know what my family feels when they see people who once supported them are now silent. Maybe they think everyone is against it. Maybe they feel abandoned. But there's one thing I'm sure of. They no longer have control over the narrative. I'm the rewriter, not by voice, but with the truth, by legal documents, by camera, with an answer without hatred, and by the fact that I'm still standing here, without bowing my head, without having to explain, without having to defend myself in every sentence. I began to understand. There are relationships that do not need to be broken manually. As long as you stop supporting it, it will collapse on its own. And when you stand firm after that, those who are still brave enough to look you in the eye are the ones worth keeping. I received a text message from my cousin on a Wednesday afternoon. Brief. Uncle Hi's family is having a birthday party this weekend. Almost all of them came. Will you come? I looked at the screen. Don't reply right away. The fact that I showed up at a family gathering, after nearly a decade of being excluded from every meal, every chat group, every news stream, was no small thing. I took a walk around the backyard. The tree I planted has started to flower. No one asked me how hard I worked. No one needs to know what money I bought this land with. But I know clearly, every paving stone, every row of bricks on the wall, every evening sitting and resharpening myself next to the dining table are all mine. I texted back, "I will come." I have never celebrated Christmas. It's not because I hate festivals, but because I have sat too many times in rooms full of people, bright yellow lights, laughter filling my mouth, and still feel like a hired waiter from somewhere. Present but not belonging. But this year, things are different. I had a roof over my head, a garden full of real trees, a kitchen with the smell of gingerbread and cinnamon that I baked myself. A guest list. None of my parents, Dan or Melissa, were on it. I didn't do it out of hatred. I do this because I don't invite anyone who thinks they have the right to walk in without knocking. The evening starts at 6 o'clock. Soft yellow light covers the porch. I set up a long table in the yard, a table I built myself, painted a light wood color. Garlic bread, bacon, grilled vegetables, red wine, and snowman cookies. The first people to arrive were Uncle Hi and his wife. They hugged me lightly, without ceremony. It was as simple as 2 elderly people coming to eat at their grandchild's house, and they finally believed. Then my cousin, who first reported the news of that meeting. Then Jaden. Then my neighbor once repaired the gate for me. Then there was an old couple who lived at the other end of the street, who used to be my computer repair customers. No one talks much about the past year. No one mentioned the past. We eat, laugh, play the Christmas song guessing game. I started to think, maybe this year will actually be peaceful, until the gate bell rang. I went out to look at the camera. 4 people. My dad, my mom, Dan, and Melissa. No gifts, no alcohol, don't ask permission. Just standing there, as if it were obvious that they belonged here. I stood in front of the gate. Do not open. We just came to congratulate, my mother said. Her eyes were still cold as ice. No matter what, family is still family. And I'm just keeping the rule my family taught me. Don't come in if you're not invited, I replied. Melissa crossed her arms. This house is not possible thanks to you alone. If it weren't for your family to support you, would you be able to survive until now? Conceiving? A voice echoed from behind me. It's Uncle Hi? You call kicking your son out of the house, refusing to let the camper park in the yard, and spreading false news pregnancy? Melissa took a half step back. Dan looked down at the ground. Lucas, my dad said, I know you're angry, but is there no room for us at a party? Before I could respond, another voice rang out. She's a cousin. It's not that there isn't a place. It's that that place no longer belongs to the 2 of you for a long time. And if anyone still doesn't understand why today, I have a printout of all the lawsuit files in my bag. The silence at that time was special. Not fear. It's the silence of a room that has heard enough, seen enough, and is no longer controlled by one-sided voices. My mother turned away. But before she left the gate, Jaden walked out, stand next to me. "Grandma," the boy said, "I want to stay with Uncle Lucas, it's more fun here." Melissa was about to pull it back, but Dan held her hand. "Let it stay," Dan said. For the first time I saw in his eyes true letting go. Don't struggle. No resistance. They go. No one said goodbye. No one keeps it. No one looked. I returned to the banquet table. Some people are silent. Someone continued to pour wine. Uncle Hai said one sentence before sitting down. "The beauty of Christmas is that everyone thinks they are forgiven, just because they wear a red shirt. But forgiveness does not come because of the color of the shirt. It comes when people have the courage to stand still and listen to everything they once ignored." No one clinked glasses. No one clapped, but everyone continued to eat, continue talking, laugh again. I sat down at the head of the table. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to avoid anyone's eyes. Don't have to guess what the person next to you is thinking. Don't be shy about talking about family matters. I am the homeowner. And everyone knows it well. It's not because I talk a lot, but because for the first time, they had no one else to trust but me. The party ended at nearly 10 o'clock. Everyone left one by one. Some people cleared the dishes, some wiped the table, some left behind a bag of gingerbread wrapped carefully with red cloth. I sent the last people to the door, touching the cold wooden frame of the gate as if checking my own pulse. A strange feeling. Not happy, not gloating, not relieved. Just a silence that for the first time, I didn't find it hard to breathe standing in it. I went back into the house. The light in the kitchen is still on, and the last person who hasn't returned yet is my uncle, my mother's younger brother. His name is Henry. Short person, premature gray hair, slow gait, few words. Of all his relatives, he was the one who was always silent the most. When I was kicked out of home, he didn't defend me. When I was slandered, he said nothing. And when I started to stand up, he didn't come close. He is pouring more tea. Put the kettle down, look at me across the table. I want to talk. I didn't sit down right away. I used a towel to wipe the water stains on the table. Then sit opposite. Tell me. Henry didn't start with an apology, but by an acknowledgement. When your mother sent you away, everyone thought it was because of some inconvenient reason. They made up all kinds of reasons. You were rude, you argued, you were destructive. But in reality, no one asked, because everyone knew that if you asked, you would hear answers you didn't want to hear. I was silent. Henry continued. And you? You know what's the strangest thing? You know I didn't do anything wrong, but you still didn't say anything, because at that time, it was easier to stay silent. I nodded. I know, but I no longer expect anyone to speak up. That's why, Henry sighed, I feel like I'm no longer in a position to talk. But tonight, when your mother arrived, when Dan and Melissa stood in front of the gate, I realized something. It turns out, none of them thought they were wrong. They thought they were being treated unfairly. I smiled slightly. And that's why I've never forgiven. Not because they did wrong, but because they didn't realize it was wrong. Henry nodded. So, if someone admits it's wrong now, will you reopen the door? I looked at him. Straight. Don't avoid it. I don't lock the door so that anyone has to kneel and apologize. I lock it to remind myself that some things should not return as if nothing had ever happened. And if they knock, he asked, I will listen, but I won't open it just because it's an old person. He was silent. Then he said, Lucas, I don't ask for your forgiveness, but I want to tell you something that no one has ever told you. I sat back. Henry said, when I was a child, my mother was treated favorably by my grandmother. Ron, my father, was loved more, given more, trusted. My mother was forced to do all the housework, blamed when my father made mistakes. My mother never forgot the feeling of being pushed to the sidelines. But instead of breaking that circle, she repeated it. With me. I closed my eyes, quiet. The worst part is not being hurt, I said. It's seeing someone who has been in pain, and then using that pain to turn someone else. Henry nodded. And what's scarier are people like you. People who stand on the outside, see everything, know everything, but think it's none of my business. I exhaled. This isn't about my parents anymore, Uncle. It's about me. I don't want to live in someone else's house anymore. Not in my mind. I've built my house, and I choose who gets to come in. Henry didn't say anything more. We sat for another 10 minutes. No one said. Then he stood up. Take your coat. Before leaving, he turned back. Can I stop by again? Not because of the past, just because I want to visit, if it's okay with you. I replied calmly, next time remember to knock 3 times. Henry laughed, for the first time all session. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight filtering through the curtains. On the table is an unfinished cup of tea. On the doorstep, a small cloth bag. Inside was a handkerchief embroidered with the letter L, obviously old. Do not include the sender's name. But I know who. I put it in a drawer, not on the wall, not on display. Just leave it there, just like last night's conversation. Don't make up, do not delete. It's just the first step for someone to stop pretending they know nothing. And sometimes that's all you need to know. You no longer have to go it alone. I received a call from Dan one evening in mid-January. I'm in the garden, trimming some dry branches around the fence. My phone vibrated in my pocket and I saw his name appear. After nearly 3 weeks of no contact since Christmas Eve, I answered the phone. Don't say anything in advance. There was breathing sound on the other side, irregular. Then Dan said hoarsely, "It's not my child." I knew immediately who he was talking about. I sat down on the steps to prolong the silence a beat longer. "Melissa admits it?" "No," Dan said. "I'm going to get tested." I waited a little longer. He continued. "She said during an argument that I was stupid, believing everything like a child. I didn't say anything, but I knew right away. I called the clinic. I took the sample. I waited 2 days." Dan's voice choked. "Not related by blood. I never thought I wanted to hit anyone so much. But then I just laughed." I don't ask why. Because I know that feeling. The feeling that when the anger is so great, it evaporates, leaving only a void. Dan added, "I went back and told her." Melissa was silent. No denial, no apology. She just looked at me and said, "So what?" as if I were a deaf person who had just been exposed to a sad song. "I listen, don't interrupt." "I kicked her out of the house," Dan said. "She brought her suitcase and a pre-printed divorce form. She signed it. She also said, 'Don't look miserable. You also turned your back on your biological brother because of me. Now it's just right to receive a little bitterness in return.'" I closed my eyes. Dan sighed on the other side of the phone. "Lucas, I have no place to go." One long beat. Then he said, "I'm not asking to stay in your house. I know you have your reasons for not wanting to. But if the camper behind the house is still there." I didn't answer right away. I went into the kitchen, opened the cupboard, took a bottle of water, and took a sip. Then I said, "The lock is not rusty." Dan arrived the next morning, with nothing but an old canvas bag containing clothes and 3 children. The youngest was temporarily sent to Melissa's biological mother's grandparents. Jaden ran out to greet me first. Natalie followed, her eyes red but not crying. Dan doesn't apologize. I don't ask either. I just pointed towards the backyard. The car is still there. Blankets are in the trunk. The gas stove is still usable. Dan nodded. Simple. Don't try to be friendly. Don't act like you're sorry. Also good. I don't need drama anymore. In the following days, Dan lived quietly in the camper. Early in the morning, I went to work as a mason for a nearby project. In the afternoon, I took the 2 children to extra school. Do not cook indoors. Don't step into the kitchen. Don't ask for anything. Only in the evening, I saw Jaden come out to water the plants with me. He didn't ask why his father had to be in the car. He only watered the exact rows of plants I had just taught him to recognize: succulents, lavender, mint. One day, he asked, "Do you hate my father?" I replied, "There was a time, yes. Now it's not anymore." "Because your dad knows it's wrong?" "No. Because you don't need hate to remind you of who did what." Jaden said nothing more. But I saw it standing still longer than usual in front of the bush I planted after my mother first refused to let me sleep over. Another evening, Dan knocked on the door. I opened. He stood outside, his hands in his pockets, carrying nothing with him. "I can't thank you enough," Dan said. I raised my hand to interrupt. "I didn't let you stay here because you deserved it." He nodded. "I know. I let you stay," I continued, "because the 3 children did not choose their parents, and because I believe you can hurt enough not to let the children carry that pain with them." Dan looked at me. "No objections. Don't cry. Just nod." "Lucas, Dad stopped calling me," he said softly. "He told me to take responsibility for myself, that men who don't know how to choose a wife shouldn't complain when life is miserable. My mother told me to dishonor the family." I laughed. "You just found out?" Dan laughed along. "Not happy, but it's true. Now I understand how you felt when you were sent away that year," Dan said. "The only difference is that at least I have someone to let me stay." I didn't reply, but for the first time I opened the door wide, signaled him to come into the house, not for sleeping, just to eat the same meal. We sat and ate in silence. 2 plates of fried rice, a bowl of boiled vegetables. Don't talk much. Jaden and Natalie slept on the sofa, their heads tilted to each side. Dan said, near the end of the meal, "I may have lost my wife. I may have lost my honor, but I think I'm human again." I nodded. Not confirmed, just a recognition. There are lessons to be learned by falling. There are no shortcuts, and I wasn't the one who pushed him down. I'm just the one clearing the path so that if you want to stand up, at least there won't be any more rocks. I received my first letter from my mother on a Monday morning. Not email. No messages. It's a handwritten letter, real paper and ink, sealed envelope, recipient's name written in the familiar handwriting I learned by heart when I was a child. I left it on the kitchen table for 3 days. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm used to having to read things that aren't written. Blank spaces, unfinished sentences, words con, written without actually saying anything. On the morning of the fourth day, I opened it. The letter is not long. Lucas, I know I have no right to ask you to forgive me. I know I've been silent for too long. But now, when you open your arms to Dan, I understand that you are not like me. Mom lived her whole life thinking that love was a reward, not something to be taken for granted, and she gave it to her conditionally, then wondered why everything fell apart. I'm sorry for not standing by your side when you needed it the most. I'm not asking you to let me come back. I just hope you don't carry your mother's coldness with you forever. If one day you want to talk, I will listen, without interruption. Love you, even though you may not believe it, Mom. I folded the letter. Don't cry, no shaking. But I put it in a drawer, along with Dan's letter, Natalie's drawing, and a copy of Melissa's divorce papers. Not to hold back the pain, but to preserve the evidence that, one day, they once learned how to write the truth. 3 days later, my father called. His voice was low, as if each word carried twice as much weight as usual. Lucas, I wait. I'm not good at apologizing. I don't intend to say I'm right. But yesterday, I sat down to eat with Dan and the kids. And for the first time, I felt that silence was not the best way to keep peace. I don't interrupt. I know your mother wrote the letter. I didn't read it, but I know she's no longer the person I thought could tell me everything. And now? I asked. Now I just want you to know. If you let me sit and listen to you just once, without defending, without interrupting, I won't use it as an excuse. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. I'm not ready to tell the whole story, I said. But if you want to hear, I won't lie. The first conversation took place on my porch on a Saturday afternoon. My father sat on a wooden chair, did not drink tea, did not look straight, I told. Each paragraph, annual. Every time I stood outside the living room door. Every night I slept in the car, looking up at the old roof where they had never come out to call me back. He did not interrupt, no sorry, just nod. When I stopped, he said, Tao Sai. It is not only wrong to be silent, I said, but it is wrong to think that silence has no price. I know. He stood up, brushed the dust off his pants and said, You don't need to give it back to me. I just hope that if you have a child, you'll teach him something I couldn't teach. Whoever hurts you, you have to know how to bandage it yourself. Don't ask others to forget your scars for you. I nodded. That's the conclusion I needed. But real closure doesn't come from someone who knows their mistakes. It comes from someone who doesn't know how to stop. Melissa, as I had expected, could not leave quietly. One night, Natalie ran into my house crying. Baby hand holding phone. Uncle, Mom posted bad pictures of you and Dad online. She said we were lured into living with two mentally ill men who wanted to kidnap children. I took the phone. On social media was a post. A photo of me standing in the garden, a photo of Dan cooking in the camper, and a status line full of innuendo. I didn't call back. I don't react. I just sent the post straight to the lawyer. 3 days later, Melissa received a cease and desist order and legal threats. A week later, the post disappeared, and so is that account. I don't see Melissa anymore. Unobserved. But I know. There are people who, when there is no one left to control, will destroy everything to prove that they have not lost, even though they clearly have nothing left to keep. Dan and I didn't talk much after that. We just sat quietly next to each other, watching the children eat, study, and water the plants. Natalie said one day, Uncle Lucas, if I become an adult in the future, can I invite you to my house? I laugh. Why do you ask that? If I didn't invite you, would you come? I was silent for a moment, then answer, or not. Then I'll invite you, he said, then ran away. I sat alone after dinner. The wind blew gently through the yard. The porch lights dimmed yellow. I thought, this is the end. Not a slam dunk ending. It's an ending that opens up something new, when no one has to scream to be believed, when no one has to struggle to be loved, when peace is no longer a wall, but an open door, but with a lock, and only those who knock at the right rhythm can enter. That night, I cooked a meal like never before. Not for any special occasion. No one has a birthday. No one parked anywhere. It's not Thanksgiving, it's not Christmas. It was simply a Friday after a long week. It was raining lightly, and I felt at peace. I bought salmon, made lemon cream sauce, boil vegetables the way Jaden likes it. Make an extra loaf of garlic bread that Natalie always asks for more, and a simple dessert, strawberry yogurt. Dan asked, is there any occasion? I shook my head. Nothing, I said. It's just that if we keep waiting for an opportunity, we may never be able to eat a proper meal together in our entire lives. The 3 children laughed loudly when I said that. I don't need this meal to be a big moment. I just needed it to happen. As a silent goodbye to a part of me that thought it would never sit at the head of the table like it did today. After the meal, when Jaden was helping me wash the dishes, he asked, are you planning to move? I stopped for a moment. No, why do you ask? Naturally, Natalie says when people feel like everything is fine, they start looking for something new. I laughed. Maybe adults still teach each other the wrong way to live. I don't want you to go anywhere, he said, because if you leave, this place will no longer be peaceful. I said nothing, just patted on the back. You know, Jaden, there was a time when I thought I'd never belong anywhere, not even in my own house. What now? I looked up at the yard. It's still raining lightly. Now you know, it's not who builds the wall that decides who stays inside. It's who is patient enough to wait for the storm to pass without giving up. That night, after the children went to bed, I sat alone in front of the fireplace. In my hand is a wooden box that I haven't opened in 6 months. In it are all that remains from the past. Letter from Mother, Dan's email, Melissa's divorce papers, fake rental contract, Natalie's drawing. The first note from Jaden placed on the steps, I'm hungry. I took out each item and placed it in front of me. Then take a new cover and write a single line. It happened. It's over. There's no need to repeat it. I glued it to the outside of the box. Sealed package. Take it to storage and place it on the highest shelf. I don't burn. Do not throw away. Because I don't deny what taught me how to stand up, but I also don't let it lie under my pillow, where memories can bleed every time I turn over. The next morning, I woke up early. Make coffee. Open. Standing on the porch looking at the sun rising. I don't think of anyone. No thought of Dan. No mom, no Melissa, no dad. I think of myself. The child used to sit huddled under the table, trying to hold his breath so the adults wouldn't notice. The man used to sleep in the camper, shivering from the cold night and the self-pity bleeding from his memories. And the person standing here, holding a cup of coffee, is no longer afraid that any voice in the house can disrupt the peaceful morning. At that time I thought, the end is not when there is no more pain. It's when you know how to not let pain decide tomorrow. I walked out into the yard and plucked a few mint branches for breakfast. Jaden walked out the door. Hello, Uncle. Hello. He stood looking at me for a moment, then asked, Is anything happening today? I smiled. Today is the first day I don't carry anyone old in my heart anymore. It nodded. So is it really a new day? Yes, I said, new day.